Okay. We should be live, I think. So hopefully everything is working out. So firstly, just check, of course, in chat, see if you guys can hear us. That would be an important thing, of course. But also from that, and I think the people, the folks can. So this does seem pretty good. So I think firstly, I want to welcome Frederick. Hello.
Hello.
And also Henry.
Hiya.
And also again joining us this week we have Lucas. Hello, my friend.
Hello.
And then joining him we have Nikki.
Hello, people.
And finally we have Gregory.
Cheers.
And so yes, cheers to that. And wow, this next episode looks like it's going to be a pretty action heavy one. We already have that clip that's come out in the last few, I think an hour or so. We'll talk about that as well. We've got all the stills that have come out in the last hour as well, so a lot to talk about. And hello to everybody in chat: Barna, the Real Rebel, Nick Corbin, Jason Guillotine, and a few others, Keith, Nick Corbin as well. So I think let's start off with what we think is going to be a big part of this episode. Gregory, I think we spoke about it a lot. Mount Doom, Orodruin, this potential eruption. Is this what Galadriel is looking at in this image here? The first one, where she looks pretty shocked. And we've seen it a few times in trailers and teasers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both what she's looking at and what Elendil and Isildur are looking at in the shot we see of them as well. I think that's almost certainly. I mean, I was trying to look more closely at the one of Isildur to see if we could catch like a little orange glare in his catch light in his eyes. I wasn't quite able to see that, but I think there's a good chance that we're seeing Orodruin explode right there.
Do you guys, Frederick, I'll add this on to you. Do you think this will be an important part? Do you think this will be the finale moment of this episode with Orodruin exploding?
We have talked a lot about cliffhangers, and I think this will be the cliffhanger for this episode, definitely. And we see a big shockwave hitting the town or the village, and I think this will be like the final moment when we see Orodruin erupt.
Yep. And I think also, not only with this eruption, in this episode, we are going to see a lot of new people meeting each other. And I think the next one, I think of who we have of people meeting is, we have in one shot, Aronde, Halbrand, and Queen Regent Midia. So Nikki, do you think we are going to see a lot of the characters throughout the season now finally all meeting each other?
Yeah, I feel like it's about time. I mean, they've spent a while building up all the separate storylines, and some of these are meant to meet and have been destined to meet. So I think it's about time. Again, we don't know 100% because sometimes they don't have the action that we see in the pictures happen in the episode that we get to see. So sometimes they trick us, but I'm hoping that it'll happen in this episode because it would be nice to finally have like less storylines to follow and more of our friends, I suppose, join together for a common goal. So I'm excited about that.
And even I think Henry, you mentioned and you said in your notes beforehand, you talked about all these the Numenoreans come to the Southlands, so we are finally seeing this moment happen with. Do you think this will be everyone's together? So the finale, the next few episodes, 6, 7, and 8. Do we see like all these characters going to stay together now? I mean, we've had the build up, the first 5, 6. You know, everyone's with different storylines, quite apart. We've got Galadriel at sea meeting Halbrand. They've got all the Numenoreans on one side, but now everyone is together. So this is the point where this. Do you think this could help potentially even the pacing of the show so far?
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that 6, 7, and potentially 8 will all be very faster paced and very singular in terms of the narrative. There won't be any like skips like you had earlier on in the season where you're going from one place to the other. I think it's just going to be one thing after the next, after the next, after the next.
Mm-hmm. And Lucas, again, do you think this will help the story maybe a bit, having all these characters now together?
I think that that moment will be quite late in the episode, because we will have a lot with Galadriel on the ship, I think. And before we have them meeting up in Tirharad for the battle, there will be a battle in Ostirith, because there's where the attackers are and where we have seen some Legolas action from Arondir. So that will take quite a lot of time. So I think the beginning of the battle will be in the last 20 minutes of this episode. And I think the talking and the character development between those characters will mostly happen in the 7th episode.
Fair enough. I think that is, again, yes, Frederick mentioned lots of cliffhangers, and I think maybe the Numenoreans coming to say save the day might be one of them. But I think you mentioned it, but we will see earlier on in the episode, definitely, we will see what's happening in Tirharad. And again, we have an really interesting shot. Let me get up 1 second, of Arondir, Bronwyn, and them looking at their sword, this hilted sword. Do you think, there's been lots of theories around, and Gregory, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that this sword and then Mount Doom exploding, there is a link between the two?
You know, I think from a meta place, like not in the show, I think yes, that it's likely. I think that the theories that have been going around, I'd say it's better than a coin flip. That is the key somehow that sets it off. How that is to manifest, I don't think we've really been given much to go off of, other than being told it's a key. So I'm really curious actually to see how that unfolds. Sort of. I mean, without going too far into it, we saw some, you could say, lore bending in the last episode. So we know they're not afraid of that. So I'm wondering if maybe they'll take a similar approach in some way with that hilt, to find a way to set off the mountain and really start the wheels spinning on the plot for the rest of the show.
I have a crazy theory about it, and I don't know if I said it last time because I was so distracted trying to keep up and watching the episode as well as listening to you guys. But I have a theory that, and it doesn't really fully make sense, but I mean, from a meta standpoint, like if I take myself out of the entire lore, it's like a portal key, and it opens up into where Sauron is sort of trapped, and then he comes out, and that's the imagery that we see of him stepping out into the crowd. That's kind of what I think it is.
But would Adar want this? Because he doesn't seem so happy about Sauron.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, he wouldn't, but then he might be tricked. He might think deceptively that thing is going to make him a god, and that's why he wants it. But then he's been tricked, just like Saruman was tricked into, thinking that Sauron would share the ring. I don't know. He's very deceptive.
And still, I don't think that Adar, or maybe it is that way that you said, Lucas, but I read somewhere a theory about Adar maybe. We can't say that Adar for sure isn't Sauron. And Sauron never uses his own name.
Yeah, I posted that.
It was you that posted that. Yeah, so that could be the case. He still can be Sauron, obviously, because we don't know who he is. And that doesn't mean that he isn't Sauron. It's just the fact that he doesn't use the name Sauron.
And doesn't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
If this is the narrative, though, I'm kind of wondering about how this all ties up with the forging of the rings. and whether that is two separate storylines entirely, and that we're watching like backwards and forwards in time without them even saying, or what is the deal there. But yeah, I'm excited to see.
I'd love to chime in on the Eldar thing real quick, if that's all right. Just from, I mean, again, presuming that they're staying relatively close to Tolkien's, imagination of all this, I was going to say the biggest problem with Adar being Sauron is almost the fact that the orcs are supposed to like loathe him, right? They fear him and loathe him. They don't love him. But there's also the notion of looking fair and feeling foul, and that at first I was going to say that seems to also be discredit Adar as Sauron, except that to the orcs, which is who we've seen around, I'm sure he looks very fair based on his current appearance relative to them. But I still don't. That's just like a little. I still don't. I think they would really be having to shift things around a lot for Adar to be Sauron.
Well, in the last episode, he was talking about like it was like he was talking about his own impending doom. Like he was about to turn into something else. Like he said, "I wish you could feel the sunlight like I do." But now soon I won't either, kind of. So he's implying that something is going to change, and whether that is him completing his change into an orc, or if it's him thinking that he's going to be a god or Sauron or whatever it is. It's an interesting little side comment that is hinting at something.
I think, actually, if I may, sorry, I think he knows he's gonna set off the mountain. He knows the key is the key to set off Ordrun, and he's planning to cover all the land in darkness, and so, which I think he's doing for the sake of the orcs, so that they don't have to worry about not being able to be in the sun anymore. He wants to provide a land of darkness for them so they can travel out in the open, and he's not gonna be able to feel the sun again, so he's making a sacrifice for the sake of the orcs.
Mm-hmm.
Also the lava tunnels.
Oh yes, it would be interesting to see how that does pan out. And I think the real rebel in chat says, I think Adar is a rival of Sauron. I think are we all on that same page? Henry, do you think he is a rival?
Well, I did, but recently I've been flip-flopping again, and I do actually think he could potentially be Sauron, because obviously creating that sort of dark area was very much kind of in line with what Sauron wanted to do. He wanted to just completely change Middle-earth to his own way, and so it's just like, is this how they would write Sauron for the show? Like, I don't know, and I keep on flip-flopping between is he not, and I just can't decide really.
It is a real interesting thing, and I think we will get back onto this Adar Sauron thing in a bit, but I think someone earlier in chat, another interesting thing I want to talk about, I think Elrond the Oathbreaker says, they ask, we haven't seen much of the Mystics, they are so weird. So, what do you guys think in this episode? Do you think we will see a bigger development of these Mystics? I think they look like priestess, or people say priestess, some people call them acolytes, but they seem important and we haven't seen much. Do you think this is the episode you might see more of them? What do you think? I'll start off with Nikki.
So, I find them fascinating, and I love variety. Like it's gonna be good to finally figure out what they are and where they're from. Like I've read that we might in this episode or in the next one get a bit more clarity about what they are, because they're a different species entirely. But they should still be like, it's not something that Amazon has fully invented. They should be mentioned somewhere, but I'm curious about how they tie into all of this and what it has to do with Meteor Man.
Mm-hmm. And Priscilla TV says the Mystics will blow up something. Maybe, I think, just to actually, even as a joke, to add on to that, Grogu, do you think the Mystics are maybe somehow linked to this Mount Doom eruption, maybe?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think those two storylines are going to remain relatively separate, at least for now. Not to say they couldn't join. I don't want to fully put my support behind this because I would love to hear some other theories. But my favorite theory so far is that they're werewolves, which I'm sure I'm not the only one who's seen that one. But there are it's mentioned in Tolkien before. We haven't really seen them truly, right? And they had the moon crescent sort of decal, and then when the strangers get attacked, there's 3 wolves. They don't look like regular wolves. So I mean, someone pointed out that one of the wolves has their paw injured, and that when we come back to the strangers this episode, if one of them has an injured arm, that might be an indication. So I don't know. That we'll find out. But I'm shipping that theory so far.
Didn't one of the mystics, when she was like investigating the crater, didn't she have like a black hand or something? Or am I remembering wrong?
Was that before or after the attack? I can't. That was before the attack, right?
Yeah, it might be
that was
before.
Yeah.
But also she was, when she one of the wolves looked down at Nori, we got the exact same shot as one of the mystics. Like in the first kind of episode, I think it was, the werewolf was looking down at Nori, and when we get introduced to the mystics, we also see one of the mystics looking down in the same angle.
And someone adds,
that could be some foreshadowing.
Yeah, and someone
for sure.
adds, Nick Corpse says, are they mystics in Melkor cult? That could be another possibility. But
Yes.
do you want to add something to that, Lucas?
Yes. First of all, with the werewolves, so more like skin changes, like Beorn, because the original werewolves of Tolkien are like always in the werewolf mode. Yes, the best case would be that they are Morgoth cultists and that the stranger is one of the blue wizards, because Tolkien wrote about that the blue wizards didn't the blue wizards failed their mission in the east with the Morgoth cult, kind of, in one of the versions, because the blue wizards are very weird in these versions, and I would very much like that, but I think that with the werewolf skin changes is more likely.
And that would be interesting, because I do feel like these, if they are skin changes, it does add all into this thing with Mount Doom. Maybe because Varlock has put a really interesting theory in chat, and I'll read it out. Mystics are searching for Meteor Man. The sword requires a sacrifice for Mount Doom to erupt, equals Mordor, and then Meteor Man is that sacrifice. Do any of you buy into that theory? It's a new one I've just seen.
6 historic.
But like, what distances are we talking about here? Is it likely that the Harfoots are going to be traveling that distance? Like,
Well, they are going south, are they not?
Yeah,
Are the Harfoots
but
not traveling south? Mm-hmm.
that far south? Like, I don't know.
To be fair, yeah, they would have to go a bit east, but we've seen in the show already that, Elrond's in Khazad-dûm 1 minute, and the next minute he's back in Eregion in the space of like 2 seconds. So you never know. They could just do some of that TV magic, they call it. I think we saw in Game of Thrones near the end, where 1 minute you're in one location, next minute you're on the other side of the world. But I think that could be a possibility. And another thing the Hunter says in chat, though, that one shot that blows the one that's actually this one where they blow it, then the leaf ends up on fire, has got to be revealing something big, maybe something to do with the Balrog in the trailer. We haven't seen that leaf blowing. So yeah, do you think we will see that Balrog again in this episode? It's quite an interesting thing. Frederick, do you think so?
If the Balrog would be like connected to Mount Doom, and that would be like some sort of sacrifice with a leaf and everything, I think that Orodruin have to erupt first, and then at a later stage we could see a Balrog through that sacrifice thing. I call it right now because I don't really know if that's the case, that you summon a Balrog that way. But I mean, I think it would be in a later stage.
Do you think after that last episode with we've seen that shot with the mythal, the backstory, then we saw the Balrog versus the warrior with the heart of Manwë or something along those lines. is it possible that that Balrog there has more meaning? Because we do have a different shot than one actually on screen right now, where it's under cable, looks like it's somewhere, and then it's boring, but that we did not see that in the flashback shot. So do you think over the next 3 episodes we are going to be potentially in a treat for that? What do you think, Gregory?
You know, I've been wondering if maybe that was a VFX shot that they've prepped ahead for a future season, sort of knowing that they're eventually going to get there. Like maybe that actually is Durin's Bane, and we're not going to see it till the 3rd or 4th season, but they've prepped the shot, and that's just an incredible sort of piece of imagery to put into the the teasers for the show and for publicity, because I can't imagine anything that warrants a Balrog or even story. I would even think that if we would have, again, maybe this is just Amazon changing things, but a Balrog would be talked about as something, as like a big event in the Second Age if a Balrog shows up somewhere. And the only time we have that as an indication is in the Fall of Khazad-dûm.
Yep. And it'd be interesting. I think some people have been worried that we might be seeing this in the Second Age in this show, but it does look like something is under in Khazad-dûm. But I think we'll have to wait and see for that. And I think it's Filk's DK in chat just said as well that the Mystics, they seem to be between the Rune Mountains and Mordor right now. So would it be the case where they're going up, the Harfoots are going down, and then they end up together, which might be in line with Mordor. Actually, we should say the Southlands at this minute. Yes, as Lucas says wonderfully.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk us through actually how it's working right now with all that?
Wait, I have to zoom out a little.
Yeah. If you guys don't know, it's the bottom right camera. Lucas will give us a little presentation.
Brilliant.
So like they start, I mean, they have more hills on their map, on the Amazon map. Like I have to just, so now we are, the Harfoot started somewhere like here, and you can't see my mouse, and then they traveled down here where they went through the swamp, and they then went up here, and they are now somewhere here.
Mm-hmm. And then
and that's the Sea of Rune. That's the Sea of Rune, of course. And somewhere behind that, on that line, Rune starts, but the crater must be somewhere here. So I should put in more stuff for that. The cultists or werewolves should have arrived somewhere from here when the Harfoots were, so they were kind of circling each other.
So they are in the proximity, aren't they? I think it's fair enough to say, right?
No,
I mean,
so
they are. Unless they're completely willing to change lore, though, Sauron can't know that hobbits even exist. I mean, that's like I'm listening to Fellowship on audiobook, and Gandalf makes that point like 3 times in the first 5 chapters. So I think. I mean, they could change that a little bit, but basically, he's supposed to be unaware that they exist, and that's how it stays out of his sight and mind for so long.
Then could it be a scenario that with Meteor Man, we saw Nori in the last episode get very, very scared and worried from what she saw and what happened. Could it be a scenario where the Harfoots, they carry on wherever they're going, then Meteor Man is on his own a bit and then goes on his own journey? Then could that then, Gregory, relieve that fear of, the Harfoots and Sauron knowing about them or whatever, so we have them separate at some point?
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a likely outcome.
And I think we have talked about a lot, and we'll get back to that part in a bit. But I think I want to go to the other side for a bit now, to someone who actually, in the last episode, in fact, had quite an interesting story. But he did make it on the ship. Isildur is coming to Middle-earth. And Henry, from what we've seen Isildur in the last episode, do you feel like he is this type of character that, not much is going for him, and a lot of that is down to himself and his attitude. Do you feel like after seeing this first experience of war and battle, this might change him? We might see that in the next few episodes?
Yeah, I do think that he, upon seeing the destruction that perhaps the explosion of Mount Doom will bring, I feel like he'll have the realization of, oh, this is potentially like something he can spend his energy on, in that sort of way, and basically like, oh, I have a calling now. I can fight. I can help do thing, and then I think that will potentially be how him and his father's relationship will then continue to blossom. Is that Elendil will then see, oh, he's finally putting the work into something, and then it'll go from there.
Yep. And I just thought of something quite funny. Of course, Peter Jackson's movie, the prologue, Isildur on the top of Mount Doom in Orodruin. He's going to be in quite a close proximity of this mountain, as you can see in the top left. Do you think we'll get a nice little foreshadowing moment that, in 5 seasons time, this will be, you know how they did it with with the sword, I think, with Narsil, there's little, we even got in the last episode where I think Valanda even said something along the lines that we hope you find something that you truly, believe in, or something like that, which is another foreshadowing moment. Do you think we could get a little nice link between Mount Doom and Isildur?
Potentially. I mean, I'm trying to think of any of like the shots or the composition that would do it, but I'm coming up blank. But I mean, there's definitely something there, but I don't see it. Who knows?
I don't see how they would do it, but I like it if they do, because I like those little Easter eggs for like the lore people.
What I'm hoping with Isildur, I mean, and we'll see. We've got 5 seasons. Is they're kind of starting him as very clearly having the same tragic flaw that ultimately dooms him in in being unable to cast the ring into the fire. Although, I mean, really, it's not a tragic flaw because no one could have done it, right? But it's presented as such anyway. But what I would love to see, just from a character arc, is for him to grow to the warrior and servant of Numenor and son of the Edain that he is that is his birthright. I want to see him grow into that and then fall short, because that's such a more powerful and tragic story than if he's just always sort of this wishy-washy character throughout all the seasons. Like, I really hope we get to see Isildur the hero, especially in season 4 and 5, when he's the one who eventually chops the ring off Sauron's finger.
Do you think... Sorry, if anyone wants to go ahead.
The thing there is, what we shall not forget, is that between the sinking of Numenor and the Battle of the Last Alliance, there are over 100 years in between where this character can also grow. Because one of the last actions of Isildur in Numenor is stealing the White Tree. And that really doesn't fit that character that we see in the end of the Second Age when he fights Sauron, which I hope will be very different in the series. But yeah, I think season 5 will concentrate a lot on building Gondor and Arnor.
So I think we are getting at a period where we will see a shift in Isildur's character too. And I think, a lot of people are saying sexy Isildur, fair enough. But I've seen quite a lot of that for Elendil as well. Elendil, a lot of people have been saying. So we will have to see how that journey goes. And we actually did see in the trailer a meteorite going right past Isildur to the left of him. So I think that will be an important moment. But I think thanks to the early released images, we still have a few more shots. And I believe this cavalry charge, we are getting battles in this episode. And we actually did see for episode 4, it had Arondir holding the sword and it ended up not being in the episode. But do you think we're seeing a moment, Gandalf returns to Helm's Deep, oh no, the Southlanders are about to, they're about to, don't want to say die, but like they're getting defeated, and then, the Numenorean cavalry come in the last few minutes. Do you think that is going to be the big, moment of this episode alongside Mount Doom? What do you think, Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be towards the end, is what I think as well. But it'll be one of those moments of relief where you've seen everything looking pretty dark and bleak and people are struggling, and then Numenor comes to the rescue sort of feeling. And then I feel like it's going to be a race against, like, for the good guys to not have the key get turned around, and then for the bad guys to have the key get turned around, and then what happens. And most likely we'll see, like, it's gonna seem like they're winning, and then maybe they don't at the end of it, and it's a big cliffhanger, and something like somebody gets the key into some sort of keyhole or opens something up and something explodes. That's what I think.
And also the fighting scene with Arondor, the preview we got, the fight scene is during the night, and the cavalry seems to be at dawn, is it?
Sunset.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sunset or in the
towards-
morning, isn't it?
Yeah, dawn is in the morning.
Yeah.
So do you think...
Yeah, I
Is
think
this
so
gonna
too.
be like they attack, no, the fight happens, and then at dawn Numenor arrives, saves the day, Sauron shows up, they defeat Sauron, take him back to Numenor.
It would be
I
a
have
little bit
question
too early for
about-
that, I think.
Yeah. that was what I was just gonna ask, prediction wise. Technically, that defeat of Sauron can't happen until after the rings have made, he's revealed himself, and then he's basically taking over all of Middle-earth at that point, pretty much. That's when Numenor comes and then captures him and goes back before the fall. Do you think that they're going to... And this is the moment when Numenor defeats Sauron? That feels just too early, but it also seems, I don't know, it seems like maybe it's going to feel repetitive if we're going to do almost this exact same setup twice in the show,
Yeah, it is an interesting thing to happen now. The fact that Numenor is coming to save the Southlanders. And then, are we, like, I don't even know, I have the same question about the scene that we've seen with Sauron stepping off those steps as I have with the Balrog, as we talked about. Is it even going to be in this season? Are we looking at clips from that they've just made to confuse us for future seasons? I don't know, because it feels too soon, but at the same time, they have been messing a little bit with the timeline, so could happen.
Thing is,
I mean, it would be very early because we have like 2 major wars going on before he gets captured, like the big wars after the rings are made, and then when Ar-Pharazôn comes and takes Sauron with him, where Sauron basically takes over the east and the regions around Umbar. But yes, I also think it's quite weird that Isildur is already there in Middle-earth. But yeah.
I think this just occurred to me. I wonder if, because of the compressed timeline, which I think I saw something that said that it's around 70 years, is about the entirety of the 5 seasons, is they're compressing it into about 70 years. What if this is supposed to represent, like, obviously we're only going to see, Miriel and Pharazôn, right? Obviously, because that's, there's nowhere later you can start in the Numenor timeline. What if what they're doing is essentially combining, maybe this is supposed to represent the Tar Minister sending the troops to the aid of Gil-galad against Sauron in, the first battle against Sauron earlier on. Maybe that's to represent.
That is the automatic parallel you would make, but I think as WC Apenas has in chat, they say, the great army of Numenor stopped Sauron's victory, 500 men and 3 ships. It's like, there's a whole battle going on. Like, I'm sure the thing how I'm thinking about it is when the show first when the marketing began and we had the press releases, they said they're going to do the rise of Sauron, the forging of the rings, the downfall of Numenor, and the war of the last alliance. And I think during that forging of the rings period, also we'll have the war of the elves and Sauron. So I just think here they're just manufacturing away just to get these characters to meet and like to have this moment. And I really think this is just the beginning of them building colonies in Middle-earth. This will be the aspect, because we saw in that scene, in the last episode, Pharazôn is trying to, start it with these colonies in Middle-earth. So that could be there. But I do see the direct parallels of Tom and Asti, and it does raise the question, who will be that figure when that event in the War of the Elves of Sauron does happen? Is it going to be Midiel? Is she still going to be Regin, or is it going to be Pharazôn? But then he has to be good in a way in order to save the day. But it's an interesting question, and I think how they do that will be an important thing. But does anybody else have anything to add around this discussion point around the battle?
I think it is better for them to combine the war of Sauron against the elves and Umbar, that in that battle he already gets taken to Numenor.
Mm-hmm.
Because
yes, I agree.
Yes.
That does work. There's like 1,000, so except from there's nothing much, terribly much happen, except from the rise of the Ringwraiths, etc. You got Pelargi.
One more. I think I'm onto something here, because remember, Tarminest here, when that happens, that's when Numenor starts to form permanent settlements on Middle-earth. And if you remember, Pharazôn's reasoning that he says to Kemen about why they're going there is essentially, he says, why would I stop this? We're going to start extracting, we're going to start, selling. Basically, he just says we're going to colonize the edges of Middle-earth, or at least start trade. So I think that, there's some component here of the fact that they're combining those. And especially Sauron doesn't really have anything against the Numenoreans now. And that is when he starts to have his hatred for them, is in that. So again, I just feel like it's not going to be exactly as it unfolded in the books, partly because of the compressed timeline, but I think that's what they're getting at here, is that this is the opportunity for Numenor to start having, permanent settlements in Middle-earth.
Mm-hmm. You do raise a good point, because it would be, because the colonies thing is a major point. It's it's an important thing that, added to the greed and power that the Numenoreans soon led to their downfall. And the fact that we even got a reference to it in by Pharazôn does mean that they are thinking about it, at least, and it is something that we will see. And I think we will get onto the battle bit in a bit, but before that, I want to quickly go back to this picture of everybody together. Someone we haven't talked about too much in this episode so far, Halbrand. He's there on the right. Anybody have any predictions to what he's the king of the Southlands? Do you think he'll give a rallying speech or something, meet his subjects, quote unquote? What do you think, Frederick? Do you think we're in for anything with him this episode?
I was just thinking about this, because the main theory right now, or a big theory, is that Halbrand is Sauron. And I thought of if the Numenoreans would come to rescue everybody and in the last second defeat the orcs, how long Halbrand can pretend like he is enjoying this if he is Sauron. How do you think that would play out? Because that is a big point and part of it, I think.
And do you think anybody think we'll get a moment where, Halbrand even meets Adar? Do you think, I'll hand this over to Nikki, do you think we'll get maybe a moment with him? So if he is indeed evil, let's see him when he's face to face with evil, with these orcs. How do you think he will react around them?
If he is evil, that's one thing. If he isn't, that's another. We might see him face to face. I still don't believe he is Sauron, and I still find it hard to believe. I'm gonna need a lot of convincing. For me, that character arc right there, it's like Daenerys in Game of Thrones. Like she's just fine, and then she's crazy.
Yeah.
To me, it makes zero sense. But I mean, if he is Sauron, then it's gonna be like a standoff. Like, bitch, you trying to take my throne? How dare you? I have a feeling that because he gives off the vibe of, you don't know what I had to do to survive. There are people in the Southlands who knows what he did. And I also get this feeling, the cranky kid, the one that I thought was Sauron in like
Oh, what?
episode 1.
Rowan.
Yeah. I'm like, is he his son? Like there is some relation there. There's something. There's something. I first thought that it was him as a kid and we're looking at backwards and forwards in time. But seeing as they're all together now in the same picture, that makes zero sense. So I'm like, there is a relation there. When he said we'll get our true king, I think he was referring to him and not Sauron, but I don't know exactly. But I don't think he's going to be welcomed with open arms by everyone, even if he is the king.
And you just reminded me of something, that Halbrand is going to be meeting Theo. Could we potentially see him meeting his father? Do you think, Henry, that could be a possibility here?
No, it just doesn't seem right to me, and I feel like Halbrand being Sauron would be more likely at this point in time. But if for example he is Sauron having a child seems very, very strange.
Indeed.
But then if he isn't Sauron, the whole idea of the way it's written so far about him having a child, it just seems very odd. I feel like Halbrand as a character doesn't have any attachments.
That's fair enough. That is fair enough. And I think one thing that we probably will see with Halbrand, and I think which would make sense, is of course him giving probably a speech to his new subjects. Do you think we'll see that, Gregory?
Yes, I do. And I think that, I mean, who knows the trajectory the show's going to take to get us there, but I think we're definitely going to get Theoden King speaking to the Rohirrim moment from Halbrand to the Southerners that he is able to bring to his cause. I think there's going to be a rah-rah King in the North moment. And I do think we're going to see a show-off between his troops, so to speak, or whoever he rallies to his cause, and Adar. And I mean, I think I'm very open to the idea that Halbrand is not Sauron. But back to the sort of coin flip thing, I think it's better than a coin flip that he is. And I think that remember, there are plenty of men who side with Sauron, as we've already seen in the show. And I think he's also known as the Deceiver, and I think he's great at helping people fight against their best interests, and I think that if Halbrand is Sauron, and we go with the idea that he's been repentant in Numenor and something sort of cracks him to decide that he's no longer that, I think we're going to see this deceit sort of unfold further and further.
Feel like I'm more convinced about the theory that he is, King of the Dead, King under the mountains, and that we see this arch of him leading, like he's done something, obviously. He's done something bad, probably left his kin to die, like probably left someone behind. He's done horrible things to survive. And he regrets this, obviously, and he's ashamed of it. And then he's going to take on this role of being a king and being a ruler, maybe leading them to a few battles. And then it's leading up to the final battle, and then he's going to choose his people over the battle, which leads to him becoming King of the Dead and King under the mountain, whatever. That's the vibe I get. Like,
well,
I like that theory better than him being Sauron.
But at the caveat that what happens if his people are in fact the orcs? Because as we got in that promo video people talking about, we got a little clip for this episode tomorrow, and I think we've all seen it here. I'm not sure, Lucas, if you have, but I've got a few screenshots up on screen. Finally, first of all, we are getting their battles. But second of all, look at the size of that orc, man. Like, who wants to
Big
comment
boy.
on this first?
Yeah, it's the biggest orc we've seen, I think. Is it?
Looks like it. I don't even think Bolg was that big, and I think he was he bigger than Azog in The Hobbit? I think this here looks like an incredibly massive. Even the other orc Arondis fighting the bottom shot is still pretty massive, to be fair. So
I think the biggest orc we have seen on screen so far is the Orc King in The Hobbit, in the Misty Mountains, the fat one.
yeah,
The Goblin King, yeah.
hmm
You know,
Chunky boy.
right, so orcs are corrupted elves, right? And if you remember the height of the Noldor in the Silmarillion, not uncommon for them to be over 7 feet tall. So, I mean, that's one way to buy it, right? Is that, I think something like Elu Thingol was like 8'6" or something. I'm probably off there. But, I don't think it's Thingol who's been corrupted, but it's obviously not. But what other elf from the First Age potentially could have? Not that this is a specific one. I'm just saying that generally speaking, if you go by that logic, then sure, tall orcs, maybe especially in earlier ages, just like as sort of men shrank over time, maybe orcs shrank over time as they got further removed from their elven origins. So, just a thought.
I mean, there's quite a few problems with the orcs and Tolkien. Like he changed them like 100 times. But yes, the elf thing is the most common. Also, we see them having like the pointy ears in the show. So yes, but I don't think the showrunners thought about that much. They just wanted a heavy tank
yeah,
orc enemy.
it
I
looks
think you're
cool.
right.
And I think one thing that we can get from this is, and I think it's Ostirith Tower. There are going to be a lot of people there. We see this attack happen in this clip. Of course, some parallels are going to be made to Helm's Deep. And I think this next shot that I'll be getting up in just a second, quite on a much smaller scale, almost kind of mirrors it in a way. It's with a lot of the Southland people who decided to stay. They are hiding underground in this cellar. And I'm not sure if any of you can see this shot, if I put it in the chat, but does this remind you of Helm's Deep at all?
It really does. I think it's, like you said, they are trying to make some kind of parallel to Helm's Deep, all the fighting scene there. And we get these shots of scared women and children. I think it's in this case also, yeah, what I can see from it. So it's definitely like the same vibe. And I mean, yeah.
It does look, and I think, interestingly enough, Theo in this clip is also hiding with them. As you see him in the top right, so he's not, in fact, in the battle. We know quite how foolhardy he is at times. So it's going to be an interesting aspect. And do you think it's like we're going into the big battle tonight? Is that what it feels for you guys? Is that what it feels for you, Nikki?
Yes. I am thinking that he is there because his mom forced him to be, somehow, by saying, like, you need to help me protect these people, like a mom would. Either that or he's seen something that terrified the shit, excuse the language, of and he went into hiding voluntarily. But yeah, this is the feeling of, impending doom. Them hiding, looking up, listening for the sounds, the sounds of the battle that's going on around them. Not knowing if they'll survive the night. That's the feeling that I get from that picture. But I mean, we've seen that not only at Helm's Deep, but we've seen it several times in Game of Thrones. We've seen it in many fantasy stories and movies, that people do tend to end up hiding or tucking away their wives and children and like particularly vulnerable people who can't really fight.
Yeah.
So it is a thing. I don't necessarily think it's a nod to Helm's Deep as much as it is like a normal thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
And people in chat are even saying, talking about Urukai, could this, because Uruk means orc, and then how this would work. They actually did leak.
Yes, isn't he saying something about that in one of the in the preview? He says something about Urukai.
Yeah.
And only
Oh, I haven't
Uruk.
seen that. Haven't
Oh,
heard that.
yeah.
Only Uruk.
Uruk.
And
Okay.
Uruk is just orc. But I think there's something interesting about Theo, because we will have a location switch at some point, because we will start at Ostirith and the battle is then taken to Tiraharad. And I think the orcs somehow get to the sword hilt in Ostirith, and Theo is the first one to run off in his heated mind to get that sword back, and then the other people, so Arondir and Bronwyn, follow him, and then we get to Tiraharad, but they can't reach the sword because it is taken to Orodruin, but the orcs are then defeated by the Numenoreans.
I think that is a fair way, and I think even just making this orc a lot bigger. Look at that. Look at the size of that guy. Wow. It almost reminds me, I've forgotten the name. Is it that World of Warcraft movie, or maybe just when they were like green? I think it might be that.
Are you saying that size does matter, Harry?
Maybe. Who knows? But all I am
When it comes to
saying,
orcs.
yeah, is that, that is a big orc.
Big scary orc.
Big scary orc.
But something I've noticed in the chat, there's a discussion going on about whether or not where is Celeborn, right? And I would just want to point out that, as we were talking about earlier, this show's obviously condensing 3,000 years into approximately 70. So based on that, I'm still okay with the idea that maybe they just haven't on there yet, they haven't. She already is married and has kids. I don't know. We'll find out. But what are your guys' opinions? Do you think that we're going to
she's
see
not married yet.
Don't you think? Yeah, that's. I guess what I'm
I feel
asking.
like she maybe meets him at some point during this, and that's how it ends up becoming something. I don't know. I feel but then again, I would love to play Celebrian, so
I think they are already married, because we know, I can't remember which part of the source material it is, but it was Tolkien did write that it was common for elves who are married to spend lots of time apart from each other, and so whether lots of time means like multiple centuries and stuff, who knows? But and then also the fact that I'm pretty sure Celebrian was born in the Third Age anyway, and so it'd be weird to have that, unless I'm completely wrong and misremembering. But I just don't think we would get Celebrian in this show and just Celeborn, who I just feel like they're already married.
Yeah, I can understand based on how long Elrond spent away from Durin and how Durin felt it, but Elrond didn't, because in the life of an elf, that's like the blink of an eye. So I can sort of understand if you're married to someone as an elf, you might even want to spend lots of time apart, because you're gonna live for a while together, so people get sick of each other. So yeah.
And Neil Battery says fans want to see Celeborn because that would ensure that Amazon isn't going to give Galadriel a cheap teen romance instead. So
I
that
agree.
is an interesting.
Yeah.
And I have put a poll up in chat as well where people are giving that on. So yeah, that's an interesting thought.
I think she may meet him in a location we haven't seen so far, Greenwood. We haven't been to the realms of Greenwood so far, and we know that stuff is happening there in the Second Age.
I think that's what I'm adding to potentially maybe they knew. I'm at the point maybe where they knew each other, but then somehow she thought he's dead somehow, but in fact he isn't, and then he sees it there, surprise. That's what I'm leading to them, and then they get married. So it still works in that.
Bill said something interesting in chat, like, would she even consider sailing to Valinor if she was married to Celeborn?
Which is why, if she did thought he was dead, that could have added to his grief and her grief and wanted to go sail. So and making that decision. So it is an interesting aspect, and I do think we might get. Do you think there is a chance we might get a name drop or even a mention of Celeborn in this season? I know some leaks did potentially, not our leaks, but did potentially infer that. So it would be an interesting aspect. But the final thing I want to end us on, the final image that I haven't put in chat by now, will be getting up, is that shot from I think it was the official trailer from what was it from? I think just the final trailer where we have Mr. Isildur with that meteor shot in the background. Mount Doom goes boom. Will it happen in this episode? We will know soon. So I think that is going to be one of the final places that we're going to end on. And I know last week with the Mithril, I did a few times I think on Philosopher Games live stream, I think on Indie Geeks, and then in the predictions that that episode was going to be quite controversial, especially around the elves. And all I'd say for this episode is that it is a much better episode, and I think people will enjoy it. Last episode I was saying I knew people might not enjoy it, but I generally think we are in for something quite big and quite interesting this episode. I don't think it won't be as controversial as the last episode, but I do think it will be something that people will enjoy. So I think that is always a positive thing. But I think we are all here. We're all very much excited for that. Does anybody have any final things or predictions that they have for this episode? I think we haven't even really talked about Celebrimbor yet, or Gil-galad. Do you think there's a chance you might not even see them in this episode again?
I think that episode will be very focused on like the stuff we've already seen, like the battle and Galadriel and Arondir, those two storylines.
Yeah.
What about we haven't really talked about whether or not we're going to see the Harfoots or what might happen there.
I think
I have an idea about that. I think that I'm not quite sure how much we'll get. I don't think we'll get much, but given we had in the last episode Nori seemingly becoming afraid of the stranger, I think she might begin to push him away. And I think that might then lead us into the stranger having an interaction or another interaction with the cultist, if they are the wolves, for example. But I just think that their closeness will begin to break down, and then just bad things will happen.
Seems like a bad romantic comedy plot right there, because it's like they have such a good friendship, and then someone does something horrible to the other person, then the other person gets mad, pushes them away, and then that person gets drawn to something else, and then realizes that no, I'm meant to be with you, blah blah blah, and then go back. That's the kind of vibe that I'm getting, that he might get tempted by, because you can see he's conflicted. He's like, am I a peril or am I good? Because he's still trying to figure it out if he's good or bad. And I think his friendship with Nori is eventually going to determine him being good, but he's going to be tempted. He clearly has powers, and if they're used for evil, then he's going to be very dangerous. But I think he is going to turn the other way eventually. We're just going to see a little bit of a, typical romantic comedy plot right there.
Yeah.
You asked if anyone has any last predictions, Harry. Here's mine. It's not related to this episode, other than I think these characters are gonna be in it. We're seeing Numenoreans coming to Middle Earth for the first time, right? Eventually the 9 rings are given out, some of them to the Numenoreans, right? I think some of the ones who survive and someone that is already in the show is going to become one of the 9, either Kemen or Ontimo or Valandil. You know, my money is on Valandil, but I don't think we'll have the answer to this for another 2-3 years. But I'm just making that
It
prediction
happens
now.
to Kemen. I don't like him. Hate him personally.
But it's only going to happen. It's Kemen if he survives the fall, you know. But
one, and I think yeah, that is a fair thing, and I also do agree with, you know, how that Numenorean plot will expand throughout there as well. And one final thing as a little Easter egg that I'll give, maybe to make people think more potential. We already know now that Galadriel and Ronda are going to meet from that image. I think is this one. Look, they're all together. But what I will say, from what I've had the not so called. I'm not sure if this image or shot will be in the next episode. I do think it's going to be in episode 6, but it might be in 7 or 8. But there is a really nice shot. So if you see, actually, you know the background, the animated background that we have that made by Kyle. Thank you for that. You see this mountain range on the left-hand side. There was actually, from what I've seen, like that's not public here. And of course, I want to say not from Amazon either. This is, of course, leak and stuff, how it works. There is a really lovely shot where we have, I think, where's that image gone of, we've got Galadriel and we also have Arondir standing together on top of this mountainside, I believe to the left here. So if I remove Galadriel for a second, so that mountainside on the left, there's one of my favourite shots that I know about this show so far, and I do believe that's going to be in the next episode, or if not the next few episodes. It's a really beautiful shot. It comes in behind, you see them from the back of their heads. So I think, yeah, that is something we are going to be, I think from the Priscilla says, are they going to hug? I don't think they hug, but it looks like either they're preparing for battle or after the battle's ended. So it's either in this next episode or next few episodes. See, that's going to be in a really exciting moment. But that is where I shall leave it. I think we all here quite excited for this next episode. Of course, the last episode was quite controversial, so it's interesting to see if the show is going to take its course and go back up, or is going to, you know, see where it will take us. But overall, I think we are pretty ready.
Really hyped.
Yeah.
The first major battle also will be fun.
Will be very, very fun. So I want to it's been a really fun discussion today. We hit 150 people, so really nice to have so many of y'all here today. Discussion's been great to chat as always. Oh my god, I've just seen a message. Kem is just trying to bag Giardi, and lol, he doesn't seem bad at all. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we will see Kem in the next episode. I think there's a lot of jokes around his hair as well. So, first of all, my man, thank you, Frederick.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Also, thank you to Gregory.
I'm always like 4 times as excited for the episode after these conversations.
Yeah.
So, thanks, guys.
Yeah. And someone said, the Wandering Net stated that episode 6, 7 is going to cinema. So I hope that means it's, well, we would be getting tickets by now if that was going to happen. So I don't think that's going to cinema. There have been press screeners for episode 6 and 7, so there'll be that. But again, also, yeah, thank you to Henry as always for coming on.
Yeah, as always, yeah, it's a pleasure.
Also, Lucas, thank you for coming on again, my man.
Thanks for having me, und gute Nacht.
Yeah. And also, Said, if you want to tell people where they can find you, let them know.
Tolkien, MacLeod on Twitter. You will find me.
Perfect. Yeah, lots of good, interesting spots and nuggets there on that Twitter. So make sure to check that out. Of course, as always, Nikki, thank you.
Namarie. It's always fun. It's always good to see you guys. Always good to chat. And thank you to everyone in the chat. We love you guys. You guys are fantastic. Thanks for coming back every week. Remember to press the like button and follow.
Yes, indeed. And I think, I forgot to end the last poll as well. So I think the results of that poll, has Galadriel met Celeborn yet? 56% say no, 40% say yes. So that is actually quite and that is quite a nice. It's quite close, so we'll have to see. But until the next one, so we'll see you on Sunday for the after party show with Kyle, Lakitia, and then Strider and rest of the gang there as well. So bye.
Cheers.